So now I would like to introduce our session and start with the beginning, hopefully. And I'm very proud today that we are starting to launch our COVID vaccine around the world. That is a new series that we have launched, that we are launching today. For those who don't know me, I am the ISOP Israel chairman. I am a physician and hematologist, and I'm working in pharmacovigilance for 25 years. And I have created with few people the ISOP Israel chapter, which is a chapter, the Israeli chapter of the International Society of Pharmacovigilance. Today, we are very, very proud to start this series with India, and especially to do that in collaboration with the Journal of Pharmacovigilance and Drug Research, which is a publication of the Global Pharmacovigilance Society. So the agenda today is very exciting. We will start with the Indian vaccination program with Dr. Maya Sharma, then the mechanism underlying COVID-19, the current scenario of vaccines, and then the digitalization and pharmacoepidemiology of the Indian vaccination program. And we will finish with panel discussion. I propose to ask the question to our speakers at the end of their presentation, and then at the end of the panel discussion, we will again give the floor to who wants to ask a question. So we are starting with the Indian vaccination program with Dr. Maya Sharma. She's a medical doctor, very trained in pharmacovigilance and pharmacoepidemiology, and also clinical trials. She's a global medical director of the company Win Medica and Mundi Pharma. She's living in Signutra in India. And in Delhi, I think that she's living in Delhi. She's an advisory board member of the Journal of Pharmacovigilance and Drug Research, and the founding member of the Global Pharmacovigilance Society, one of the founding members. And she is very, very involved in the organization of pharmacovigilance conferences. For the time being, it was online, and the next one is very soon in June, I think. So, Maya, it's yours.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I would just request you to allow me to share the screen. And please let me know once you are able to see the screen.
We see your screen.
See your screen, yes.
And
okay.
Perhaps mute all the microphones for everybody.
Sure. So I'll be talking about India vaccination program, hits and misses. And I would like to actually start with a quote on India. India is a place unique in the space, beaded with pearls of unity, beaded with oneness in diversity, paving ways to integrity, saving itself with its originality, serving as an epitome of unity in diversity. And before I start my actual presentation, I would like to put across this disclaimer that all the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are personal, and none of my current or past employers or any of the organizations, society or journal them associated with. And again, I'm a doctor first, I'm a clinician, and then I would say an employee of an organization. And I still remember the Hippocrates oath that patient safety comes before anything else. Now, with that, let me take you through that why India is called the vaccine manufacturer of the world. As per the data, India produces some 60% of the world's vaccines. In fact, UNICEF depends heavily on vaccines which are produced in India for its global health programs. Why? Because one, there is low cost of production and also of the clinical trials which are done in India. On top of that, there is a large pool of talent which is available for a wide range of needs of pharmaceutical industry. And that is why today, India has become a global leader of export in bulk drugs and of formulations, including the vaccines. So with that pretext, we all know that last year, we got to know about a new devil by the name of coronavirus. And as soon as we knew about the implication that it could bring to human health, and the cases that were rising, I would say India was no different. I mean, last February in 2020, when we could detect just 2 cases of coronavirus infections, by March they rose to 1,394. By April, they were 32 times of this number, and India reached its first peak somewhere in September with 2.6 lakh cases, 2.6 million cases, right? So with this increase and seeing the magnanimity of the situation, there was a war which was waged by various countries in terms of development of vaccines. So it was US, China, Canada, France, Russia, UK, everybody was in fray, and they started working on a potential COVID vaccine, because going by the historical experience, we knew that it would be very difficult to tackle. So US had some 96 vaccine candidates in progress. China had 31, Canada, India each had 22, France somewhere 17. So all the countries with whatever expertise and all potential might that they had, they started working on the vaccine development. India also waged its war against this particular virus. And now let me talk about the series of hits as far as the vaccination program of India is concerned. So as soon as we saw the dawn of this new year 2021, we realized that on 1st January itself, Covishield was approved by DCGI. And on 2nd of Jan, again, there was second approval for Covaxin. So these are 2 different vaccines by different manufacturers. Covishield is manufactured by Serum Institute of India, though it's an original research work of Oxford AstraZeneca. Covaxin is indigenous to India, where the research work has been done by Bharat Biotech, and even manufacturing is done by the same organization. Now, before we delve into the details of these 2 vaccines, let us first understand in what condition were these approved. And here I would like to take the liberty of quoting the US FDA definition for emergency use authorizations. So as per US FDA, the Emergency Use Authorization Authority allows FDA to help strengthen the nation's public health protections against CBRN threats by facilitating the availability and use of MCMs. So CBRN stands for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats, and MCM is actually the medical countermeasures which are needed during public health emergencies. So in what conditions, the drugs are approved under this particular provision? Well, again, if there are medical products which are unapproved, or there are unapproved uses of approved medical products to be used in an emergency to diagnose, treat, or prevent series of life-threatening diseases or conditions caused again by the chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear threats, when there is no other adequate, approved, or available alternatives available. Now, why I chose to use the US definition was because in India, we were using emergency use authorization, or EUA, for the first time. We have never used this earlier ever. And now let me take you quickly through the organizations behind these vaccines. So the first one is Serum Institute of India by the Cyrus Poonawalla Group. And as per their guiding principle, they say that progress is not only about how we grow, it is about how we make a difference in the lives of others. Serum Institute of India is India's #1 biotech company and the world's largest vaccine manufacturer as per volume, because they produce 1.3 billion doses every year, including the polio vaccine. So it supplies to over 140 countries. And it is estimated, because of all these statistics, that about 65% of children in the world receive at least one vaccine which is manufactured by Serum Institute of India. It was founded by Dr. Cyrus Poonawalla to ensure that vaccines do not remain a luxury for children in India. And having achieved that goal first, Serum Institute started supplying high quality yet affordable vaccines to several countries around the world. And that is why various international agencies like WHO, PATH, NIH, etc., they work with Serum Institute to develop vaccines against meningococcal A, H1N1 influenza, rotavirus, and other diseases. Moving on to the next organization, which is Bharat Biotech. As per Dr. Krishna Ella, its chairman and managing director, that they do not see themselves combating competitors. Instead, we are combating against region-specific diseases. So again, their mission is to lead the fight against diseases. It is another biotech company which is headquartered in Hyderabad, India, engaged in drug discovery, drug development, manufacture of vaccines, biotherapeutics, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare products. The company has been responsible for developing rotavirus vaccine and was one of the first to develop vaccine for diseases like chikungunya and Zika virus. The company also produces vaccines for Japanese encephalitis. Well, after this brief introduction, let us move back to the two vaccines which were approved by DCGI in the beginning of the year, the Covishield and Covaxin. Now, for the first time, I would say the Indians realized that there was something more precious than gold, which is these vaccines. So if we compare Covishield to Covaxin, Covishield, as mentioned earlier, is produced by Serum Institute of India, but it is the original research of University of Oxford and the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. It uses the chimpanzee adenovirus vector, whereas Covaxin uses the inactivated coronavirus itself, the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself, right? So there is a difference in the actual technology, how these vaccines are produced. Both of them are stable at a similar room temperature, which is 2 to 8 degrees, and both of them require 2 doses each, right? So there are similarities and there are differences. I would say that initially when Covishield was approved, there was data available from trials in Europe and US. And for Covaxin, there were trials which was still ongoing, but it was given an emergency use authorization. It led to a lot of backlash to the regulators, but then finally things started falling in place. And when we saw the interim analysis of Covaxin by Bharat Biotech, it shows some 80.6% efficacy, which is in fact better than Covishield, which is AstraZeneca's, right? So how it all started? Well, the government started doing the vaccine math along with both the companies, and it was decided that in the first lot, Serum Institute of India will supply Covishield, some 11 million doses at rupees 200 per dose. So let me tell you, the vaccination program in India, if we talk about per dose, is also the one of the most economical in the world. You know, you will never find prices like this for such important vaccines. For Bharat Biotech, it was decided that it will supply Covaxin starting with 1.65 million doses free, right, as grant to Government of India. And then the next 3.8 million doses to be provided at 295 per dose. So overall, it actually comes out to a similar math to Covishield with 206 per dose if we calculate the overall 5.5 million doses. Going forward, the second lot, Serum Institute was supposed to provide 45 million doses at the same rate, 200 rupees per dose. And in phase 1 vaccination, 30 million people, including the healthcare workers. And then later, the 10 million healthcare workers, and then the other frontline workers like the police, the sanitation workers, etc. And then as per age-wise criteria, in second phase, it would be supplying some 270 million for 270 million people, which is approximately 540 million doses. And for the first phase, which was for the frontline workers and healthcare workers, the government was supposed to bear the complete vaccination cost. And with that began the Shankhnad, as we say, the auspicious beginning. You know, when Mahabharata epic happened, Lord Krishna used to begin the day with blowing the conch. So that is how on 16th of January, the vaccination drive started in India. It was the world's largest vaccination drive because if we see, India is the second most populous nation after China. But since China was able to control it well in time, maybe within 7 months of starting of the disease, the second most populous country was India, and also with the cases surging. So we kicked off this with the frontline workers and the sanitation workers, and there was a wide coverage of this around the world, and it was a good start. If you see that in less than a week, starting on 16th January and by 22nd January, so that is less than a week, India actually bred into the top 10 countries by giving more than 1 million doses by 22nd January. And then I would like to quote Adar Poonawalla, again, who's the CEO of Serum Institute of India. He said, we committed ourselves to COVID-19 in March. He was talking about 2020. We took a huge risk because nobody knew then that any vaccine was going to work. So out of the 800 million doses we needed, we put some $270 million, and the rest we raised for the Gates Foundation and various countries. We dedicated 1,000 employees to the program and deferred all product launches planned for 2020 for 2 to 3 years. So as we discussed earlier, they were producing a lot of other vaccine which they had put on hold to prioritize COVID vaccine production. Then it was the question of equipping those facilities and getting them validated for use, which we did in record time. By August, we were manufacturing and stockpiling a vaccine that we predicted correctly would be approved around December. The first doses were shipped in January, and we have dispatched some 30 million doses to date. And he was talking this on 14th of Feb 2021. So actually, I would say all the vaccine manufacturers, including him, took a huge risk. While developing, they were parallelly running phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. And not just that, they did not limit there, but they were also manufacturing and stockpiling these vaccines, contrary to the usual norm, where the phases happen one after the other. And only when one phase gets cleared and there is immunogenicity and safety data available, we move on to the next phase. But that would have taken years. So there was a paradigm shift in the approach taken, but I would say more than that, it was the guts, it was the risk-taking ability of these developers who also stockpiled. If these vaccines would have failed, they would have lost millions. But then they took that risk for humanity. India started doing really well, and it was the first country to reach the 100 million mark within just 85 days. Even beating US, which took 89 days to vaccinate 100 million people, and China took actually 103 days. So a very good start and a good speed, that they did. So the vaccine rollout happened in different phases. As told, 16 January, it was initiated for healthcare workers, police force and sanitation workers. 1st March onwards, it was started for above 60 years of age, and also for people above 45 years if they had other important comorbid conditions. And 1st May, this month itself, it has been opened for all adults above 18 years of age. Now, it seems that it is all good. It's all a very rosy picture. India being the vaccine manufacturer or the pharmacy of the world, did a good start, have been beating China and US in vaccinating people in the initial few days. But then it is still a mammoth task to vaccinate India. And why do I say so? Well, if you see, the population of India is 1.37 billion. If you take each and every state of India is equal in size of population to one nation. So I have just put for your reference 2 different maps of India with population of different countries, just to give you an idea that with such a populous nation, you're actually not planning to vaccinate a country, but like 30 countries together. So it is indeed a mammoth task. But even after all that, when we knew that our own population is this much, we went ahead gifting and exporting vaccines, right? So what was behind the vaccine diplomacy? I would say it was this notion of India. It says, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukbhag Bhave, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. What does it mean? It says that may everybody be happy in the world. May everybody be free from disease. May everybody have good luck. May none fall on evil days. So it was after this ideology, we believe that we should not just take care of our own disease and happiness, we should actually be caring for the world. And that is why, we created Hope for the World. India started receiving specific requests for the vaccine from some 60 countries. And India's foreign ministry started working to supply some 160 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine to these 60 countries and even UNICEF by the end of March. The vaccine supplies would include some 100 million doses and gifts, 10 million doses and gifts, which in the first round focused on India's extended neighborhood. This I'm talking about 31st January, just like 15 days after we started the vaccination program. And the 30 countries which had actually asked us, for giving them vaccines were Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Serbia, Guyana, Egypt, Morocco, Maldives, Mauritius, Bahrain, Oman, UAE, Iran, Brazil, Dominica, Antigua, and Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, Mongolia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Philippines, Algeria, Tunisia, South Africa, Botswana, Eswatini, and Kenya. But we believe that we should be saving lives in other countries as well. Prime Minister Modi said in his address to the annual World Economic Forum in Davos that by sending vaccines to various countries, we are actually saving the lives of citizens in other countries too. And in fact, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described India's vaccine production capacity as the best asset the world has. In fact, External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar promptly promised that New Delhi would deliver to its promise. You can count on the pharmacy of the world to help overcome the COVID-19 challenge. So with all these good feelings and supporting our neighbors and, countries of the world, there were a lot of accolades, and I would like to mention especially this one from Brazil by Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil. When the first 2 million doses were gifted, he said Brazil feels honored. And in fact, on his Twitter account, he shared this picture of Lord Hanuman, carrying, like in Ramayana, Hanuman carried the Sanjeevani booty to save the life of Lakshman. So here it was to save the lives of the people of Brazil. So for this friendly notion, he thanked India with Dhanyavad Bharat. So with that, by 12 Feb, 20 countries had already received the Made in India vaccines, and some 229 lakh or 22 million vaccines had been supplied to different countries. Out of these, 37% doses were given as grants, and only then they were sold to these countries. So there were countries besides these in Latin America, Caribbean, Asia, and Africa, which were asking, and the recipient countries even included developed nations and the other ones like UK, Canada, Brazil, and Mexico. And it was not just Covishield, which is the manufacturing might in the world, by Serum Institute, but also Covaxin, which were exported, some in the form of gifts, others in line with the commercial agreements signed between vaccine makers and the recipient nations, and the rest under the COVAX scheme, the prestigious scheme led by World Health Organization, which hopes to deliver more than 2 billion doses to people in 190 countries in less than a year. So India was the major supplier for the COVAX program by WHO. So if you see the vaccine production, which was data as of 3rd March, we see that China was producing the most doses, followed by United States, Germany, and India. But if you talk about exporting that, then India was leading the trend. So supply is all about attitude. US, though it was the top supplier, but still we see that US and UK were not sharing those vaccines with the countries, keeping the nationalism high. They were saving their doses for their own population. But India went ahead and supported the COVAX initiative, and 80% of these were supplied by India. So that was all the good part, the series of hits. Now let us talk about the big miss. What went wrong in India? Well, somewhere in March and then starting with April, and by mid-April, we saw the second COVID surge, where the COVID-19 test positivity rate in India was some 11.5, very high, and it was inching closer to the peak daily average of TPR of 12.5, which was recorded last year in July, right? So the cases started surging again in India. So the vaccine export was put on hold. So in March, India placed a temporary hold on all exports of AstraZeneca vaccine, and the government explained that it was because of the rising cases meant that the domestic demand was expected to pick up in India, and so the doses were needed for India's own rollout. What went wrong? Well, I would say that during that time, from March to mid-April, everything which could have gone wrong had gone wrong in India during the second peak. There was massive vaccine shortage. If we talk about the drugs, some of the drugs which are prescribed for hospitalized patients, remdesivir and tocilizumab, were also facing the shortage and black marketing even. Oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrators were selling at 3 to 10 times the cost. Coming back to vaccination, well, there was this data which was published, and it was realized that at the current rate, India's COVID-19 vaccination will actually take 10.8 years to complete. This was the data by 18th March. If we take into account again the data by 5th April, we realized that though India was a front runner in vaccination, both in producing and vaccinating its population, by somewhere in April, it started slipping, and it had moved on to the 8th position by the way it was vaccinating its population. So it was not comparable. It was much slower than the comparable economies. If we talk about the data by the end of April, India, with its population of 1.38 billion, has vaccinated, it has administered 147 million doses. But even with that, though it is second only to US, it has been able to fully vaccinate only 1.8% of its population and partially vaccinate 7.1% of its population. So it again goes back to the population size, right? There have been vaccine wastages as well. There has been some, hesitance to get vaccines. But overall, if we see that out of these cases which have been vaccinated, obviously Covishield was given to more than 90% people, and less than 10% received Covaxin. So we have been lagging now as far as the vaccination drive is concerned. The vaccination has been coming down, and what is paralyzing this vaccine production and sufficiency, which were all promised in the beginning of this drive? It was realized that the vaccines were not ordered and stockpiled on time. There was a lot of haggling between the regulator, government, and the manufacturers over the price. There was shortage of ingredients which are required in manufacturing of these vaccines. Also, there were export restrictions from sourcing countries and foreign export obligations. So because of all that, it was paralyzing the vaccine sufficiency and supply in India. And unfortunately, many vaccine centers in India had to be shut due to non-availability of vaccine doses. And now we are in a situation where we are rationing the vaccines because there are limited stocks available. And in fact, a lot of hospitals and clinics where the vaccines were given had to put up the board of out of stock. And as it always happens in a situation like this, the blame game has started, with everybody pointing the fingers on the others. But I think that is not the solution. We have to take the rein in our hands and understand what can be done. So are there other options available? Well, Sputnik, which was developed by the Gamaleya National Research Center of Epidemiology and Microbiology and distributed by the Russian Direct Investment Fund, was approved for use in India on April 12, 2021. It was again granted an emergency use authorization. So with this, Sputnik has joined Covaxin and Covishield in the COVID-19 immunization drive in India. As per the last data from the Lancet, it has an efficacy of 91%. So the first consignment of Sputnik from Russia landed on 1st May itself, and the second on 16th May. And on May 14, Dr. Reddy's, which is the domestic collaborator, launched Sputnik Indian market. And in fact, the first dose was administered on the same day in Hyderabad. So if we compare, not just DRL, which is Dr. Reddy's, but there will be other manufacturers or importers, pharma companies from India like Mankind and Hetero, which will also be working along with Russia's Sputnik. And the technology is just a little different, that instead of using, the chimpanzee adenovirus vector, it is using 2 modified human adenovirus vectors. Also, the government has changed the strategies. Now, the vaccines which are already approved by the other regulators in markets like US, UK, European Union, and Japan, they will be given a fast-track approval in India. And the first 100 recipient will be closely monitored for 7 days before a wider rollout happens here, which means that vaccines like even the ones by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna could be made available for Indians. There are 2 points which I would like to mention here. One is the logistics and storage, because the vaccines which are currently available in India can be stored at a temperature of 2 to 8 degrees, whereas the one by Pfizer require -80 to -60 degrees. Moderna again require between -25 to -17 degrees. In India, in parts of India, the temperature in summer months like this can go up to 45-50 degrees. So it would be a logistic nightmare and a storage nightmare. And secondly, if we also talk about the cost, the cost is quite high as compared to the existing options. But let us see, it is for the government to decide. And somewhere we are getting the signs and signals that, for people who want to pay from their own pocket, they might even allow that. So are there any other vaccine candidates beside these? I would say yes, there are a lot by Indian companies, either indigenous or in collaboration with other foreign counterparts, like Zycov-D by Zydus Cadila. Then there is a vaccine which is being developed by Biological E, which is India's first private vaccine making company in collaboration with US-based Dynavax and Bayer College of Medicine. Biological E, besides this will also develop the vaccine by Johnson & Johnson. HGCU19, which is India's first mRNA vaccine. So there are ones we know from Pfizer and Moderna, but this will be India's version of mRNA vaccine by Pune-based Genova in collaboration with Seattle-based HDT Biotech Corporation. Then another feather in Bharat Biotech's, in the cap by that it is coming up with a nasal vaccine. And then Serum Institute of India is also developing another vaccine with American company Novavax. So with this, I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. If we see the data, which was yesterday, overall COVID-19 cases are 263,000 with some 4,329 deaths in the last 24 hours. The total vaccination which has happened so far is 1.8 billion. But with this, I would like to end my presentation saying that there is something in the human spirit that will survive and prevail. There is a tiny and brilliant light burning in the heart of man that will not go out no matter how dark the world becomes. So there have been hits, there have been misses in the Indian vaccination story, but we are not losing spirit, and the indomitable human spirit will win. We'll keep working for humanity. Thank you so much. That was all about my presentation.
Maya, it was really a great and inspiring presentation, not only on about the very important information that you have given to us, but also about inspiring quotation. Thank you so much. So perhaps we will ask if there are any questions. I have some questions, but I will leave perhaps other people ask questions. Peter, yes.
Maya, thank you. That was a terrific presentation. Definitely getting up early to hear. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the testing protocols in India?
When you say testing protocol, I assume you're talking about the clinical trials?
No, testing citizens for infection rates.
Oh, testing for infections. Okay, so we are using, the RT-PCR test, which is considered the gold standard anywhere in the world. So that is being used at times, in between when we were doing the testing at mass level, then rapid antigen tests were also being done. But for confirmation, always it is RT-PCR which is being considered.
Other question, Peter, do you have another question?
Nope, that was it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other question? Please open your microphone and ask directly if you want to. I cannot see everybody on the screen, so you can ask directly your question.
Hello, hi, Maya.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Pripasha from UK. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, very succinct and to the point. I do have sympathies for India, being my home country. And I think India has done a great job actually, vaccinating many people. But there is miles to go, I think. However, I would like to understand the dosing schedule, which was initially, 4 to 6 weeks, have now been extended to
12 weeks.
12
weeks. Yeah,
that's true.
So in UK, we had followed the same pattern of dosing schedule, which was 12 weeks, AstraZeneca.
Right.
I'm talking about AstraZeneca.
Right.
Why didn't the, ICMR, which is Indian Council of Medical Research, along with other epidemiological pundits in India, not consider taking the UK schedule and dosing, the citizens of India?
Okay, sure. Thank you for your question. Well, as per my understanding, just a second. Yeah, so as per my understanding, the clinical trials which were done in Europe, especially UK, for the AstraZeneca vaccine, which in India we know as Covishield, it was seen that, after this, the dose interval between the two, the first and the second dose was anywhere between 4 weeks to 12 weeks, and different levels of efficacy. But yes, it was effective with a gap of anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks. So when we started vaccinating people in India, because we wanted it to be, be done in an expedited manner. So that is why we suggested initially 4 weeks for both, so that there is no confusion between both Covaxin and Covishield. So we said the doses can be taken after an interval of 28 days or 4 weeks. But then gradually, as we realize that there is a vaccine shortage, which we can foresee, again, we went back to our clinical experts and epidemiologists, which suggested that it can be increased from 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and now it is recommended 8 to 12 weeks. As a scientific expert or a researcher, I would say it is all right, because if it is there in clinical trials, all those measures can still be taken. But yes, if the math would have been done correctly, then one recommendation could have been given to avoid the confusion. But it can be safely given anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks as per the clinical trial data.
Yeah, I think there was already, thank you for the answer, Maya. I think there was already data available by the time that we started vaccinating here. And the MHRA within week, in fact, not week, immediately after granting emergency approval here, we did recommend that the optimum time to dose the second dose would be by 12 week because of good efficacy. And there were data showing that as you prolong the dosage, the efficacy goes higher. The efficacy is much stronger and higher. So I would have thought that would have helped India not only to beat the shortage of vaccines, but also to get good efficacy after the first dose. But anyway, better late than never. So I hope with all the other vaccines coming in, the vaccination program is really going to take up speed, and already with the falling numbers, it will do better. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I think let bygones be bygones. If we are still doing course correction, it's all right. Yeah.
Hi.
Yes.
Cyril Cohen. Yeah, Cyril Cohen from Israel. Hi. I have two questions. The first question is regarding side effects of the vaccines. What have you noticed? Second thing is the efficacy of those vaccines against, the different variants. What is your experience with that?
Okay, so I would actually park the first question regarding the side effects for the second presentation, because Dr. Chinmay would be extensively covering up the side effect profile. As far as the efficacy is concerned, AstraZeneca vaccine showed an efficacy of 70%, Covaxin showed an efficacy of 80%, and Sputnik is now showing efficacy of 90%. Was that your question?
Against the variants.
Against the variants, right. So if we see against the variants, then thankfully so far whatever data is available, whether it was the South African or the Brazilian or even the recent the variant of concern in India, 617B, it has been effective against these variants. As per the official data available, it has been effective.
Effective at the same level as you've seen with the original strain?
So again, this data, which has been not segregated, whether, as per different variant, what is the level of efficacy, it's still not available with us.
Thank you. Thank you and good luck.
Just to add to what Dr. Maya is saying, if I'm allowed, for Bharat Biotech, which is producing Covaxin, we have data that it is working against all variants. So ICMR labs, Indian Council of Medical Research labs have shown that it works. And as a practicing, I would say, physician for the last, few years, we have seen that Covishield, and this is personal experience, of course, that is failing to prevent the disease. We have now data coming in that Covishield double dose people have been infected, and this is the AstraZeneca vaccine. People are infected. Some of our very, very senior doctors, we have lost a couple of very senior doctors who were doubly infected, the head of IMA, Indian Medical Association. So this is my personal take on this, that Covaxin is working much, much better than the AstraZeneca vaccine in Indian context. Of course, we need concrete data, we need genomic analysis data to back this. Right. But as what we are seeing in hospitals, the AstraZeneca vaccine I don't think is being able to control the Indian variant or whatever the variants of concern.
I think this is Pipasha from UK, and thank you, Shubhra Jyoti, for confirming this. This is actually correct, that the AstraZeneca vaccine against the double mutant strength of India, which has happened in India, is not working at the moment. And Covaxin is a better candidate. to neutralize that. To that effect, even in USA, I was reading an article the other day that Dr. Fauci also vouched for the Covaxin neutralization. And there have been a number of deaths, including several of my classmates back from my medical school who have passed away, even with complete dose, taking both the vaccines, Covishield vaccine, so who never had any comorbidities. So that was a big concern. So I think it would be better if Covaxin, which was earlier not, politically, there were a lot of issues, the opposition parties and all not agreeing to it. But I think Covaxin is a great candidate for this double mutant virus. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, again, my personal observation, Covaxin has been a late bloomer, but it is doing good. But then whatever we have discussed, it is our, as per our knowledge from our doctors and colleagues, etc., the official version by the government is still not out. The evaluation and analysis is still not out.
Okay, I propose to leave other questions for the end of the session in the panel discussion, and to go to Dr. Chinmaya Mahapatra, who is a pharmacologist